So today, what we are going to discuss is on financial planning, where we intend to understand more about how do we manage our savings, investments, and how do we take care of our different financial goals. Whenever we talk about finance, there are a few things which will always come on top of our mind, like savings. Here, you have money, you have investments, and when then you sometimes you start thinking about wealth creation, and all these things will actually come up at different stages. And we always say that irrespective of whatever age group we fall in, the financial goals will always keep on coming up. The timelines for these goals would differ, but there will always be some or the other commitment which will come up. Hence, the way to look at it is like wealth creation is a journey. So when you say wealth creation, you do wealth creation for a purpose, you do wealth creation for a reason. Money is just a tool. It's not necessary that someone who has a lot of money is always doing the right thing. Money is just a tool. You may have a lot of money, but if in case you do not utilize it in a proper manner, you do not save it or invest it in the right manner, it doesn't translate into wealth creation. So hence it's just a tool. It's an enabler. The financial plan is the overall roadmap where you consider your savings, your investments, your financial goals. So you need a roadmap for your entire financial journey, and that is what financial plan does. And the last line is the most important thing, that you are the driver. For my financial plan, I am the driver. What I do with my savings, how do I save, what approach do I follow for my investments, do I get carried away with what is happening in the recent market, do I look at only trending things. Okay, these things matters a lot when you look at your investments. Hence, the way we behave on basis of our understanding, on our basis of our experience, that will define how firm and how good our financial plan will be. So it's not about just money, it's about a roadmap, which is your financial plan, and you. So in some coming few minutes, we'll discuss a lot about this, and we'll go through each and every segment where we try to understand each and every element of a financial plan, and how, irrespective of whatever age group you follow or whatever financial goals you have, these are all important things which will help you to work on your plan. So when we talk about financial plan, what exactly is a financial plan? It is very simple. Now, financial planning is basically a step-by-step process where you organize and optimize your savings and investments with a purpose of different financial goals that you will have. It is as good as most of the time what we have seen is this is how our financial life will be. While we want to save, of course, we Indians all are natural savers, we like to save, but we do a lot of savings. At the same time, we end up doing many random investments. And with that, what happens is something like this gets developed. A financial plan, in a very simple term, will make your overall finance more organized. It gives you more purpose. On the basis of your requirement, the financial plan will help you to not just identify, but also to achieve these different financial goals and objectives. That's how simple financial planning is. So how do one work on financial plan? So let's look at these steps. Now, these are very simple steps. You can also try to follow at your end. It doesn't, in the initial stage, you do not need a professional to actually work on a basic financial plan for yourself. I believe a lot of clients that we interact with, or a lot of people that we interact with, already have some sort of a plan in their mind. Where the need comes in for a financial advisor or a financial planner is when you want to take it up in a proper, thorough manner. So if in case today you want to work on your financial plan, or you want to begin with your financial plan, how will you go about? So the first thing that you do is you look into your monthly cash flow, your income and expenses. These are very important point, because your income is going to be an important source for your overall financial plan. So income and expenses. You drill down into your expenses. Income is always limited. Your expenses are more in your hand. So you drill down into your expenses, try to work on a budget that will give you how much monthly surplus you have in your hand. That's first step. Second step, as we go further, check where your existing money is. As we discussed earlier, a lot of people have the tendency of saving it and parking it at one particular instrument. Now, gone are those days where we can follow the approach of fill it, shut it, forget it kind of an approach, where we just invest into it and then we forget. In today's time, it is important to keep on re-looking into it and keep on reviewing it. Not necessary to change it, but it's important to look into it. And another thing that we have noticed is there are a lot of times where the money remains invested in one particular instrument, which may not be working for your financial goal or objective. So like a classic example of I may have money in my fixed deposit and my goal is to retire after 15 years. So there's a mismatch. Hence, it is important to know where each and every money of yours is lying or invested. As the next step now, after understanding your income and expenses, you come to know about your investable surplus every month. That is what you have to take care of your financial plan. Where your money is lying, that gives you your current assets. So these two are the core source of your financial plan. This is where the inputs come from. This is where the inflow comes from. Then you look at how do you identify the financial goals. Now, each and every person is different, so our goals will be different. There is a possibility that my colleague or my friend who is of my age, his financial goals would differ than mine. On the basis of that, because it's a very subjective topic, identify the financial goals that you have and set a priority. Priority for me could be retirement first. Priority for my colleague or my friend could be, her child's education. So it matters a lot, okay, when it comes to identifying these financial goals and prioritizing it. So sit with your family, try to prioritize these financial goals. Then comes the next step of, since you already have your current assets, where you have parked your money, where your money is lying, all those information you already have it. The next step will be to start mapping these investments to a particular financial goal. None of us leave our house without deciding where do we want to head. The destination first is decided and then we step out of our house. Likewise, our investments need to be the same thing. Your investments need to have a purpose and a destination. Any investment which is just lying like that is not going to help us. So start mapping your existing investments to your financial goals that you have identified. Then from your cash flow, that is your monthly budget and the amount that you have in your current assets, start looking at the investments. How do you start investing into your savings and assets in the right place for each and every financial goal? Now, once you start investing your monthly cash flow, and if in case there's a need for you to relook into your assets, then you start placing it for each and every financial goal. Once you have done this, remain invested for a long time and start reviewing it every 6 months. As I said earlier, it is not necessary for us to change any investments. You only review it and if required, then change it. But this review is very important because it will help us to understand where do we stand. Where do we stand in these different goals? Are these investments of your monthly savings and your current assets, which you have invested, working for you and your plan? These are very simple steps to go for your financial plan. Okay, try it out in a very simple manner. You can start with an Excel sheet, try to put down those details, and then try to work on it. And then once you do investments and review, okay, you be invested. The most important thing is these financial goals will be some short-term and some will be long-term. So in that case, if there are some long-term goals that you have in your mind, okay, and for which you have invested, the strategy or the right strategy to do is to de-risk these investments when you near the financial goal. Now, all of us have seen what has happened in March 2020, where within few months the market went down by almost 32%. Let's say if in case I was about to retire in the month of October 2020, and I had entire corpus of my retirement invested into equities at that time, the possibility of my accumulated wealth for my retirement going down by 30 to 40% was much more higher. But if I follow a de-risking strategy where I start withdrawing, just like how we invest through SIPs, I do SWP, systematic withdrawal plan, or I start withdrawing from the assets where I've invested into 2 years before the financial goal every month. So you start de-risking it. When you start de-risking it, the risk on your overall corpus, when if in case the market doesn't work in your favor, is much, much lower. So for long-term goals, always have this strategy of de-risking it when you are nearing your financial goals. That's how you work on a financial plan. Okay. What are the key elements? There are not many key elements that are important in financial planning. These are simple, but these are very important, and we'll go through it step by step. So as we discussed, the two sources of your financial plan are your income and your current assets. Now, when we talk about income, we already discussed that we need to look into our monthly budget. The monthly budget will tell you the potential of every month, how much we can save. The next step is, it's a difficult one, but it's worth trying. Try to optimize your savings. Usually we will follow income minus expenses. Jo bach gaya, that is my savings. Try it out the other way. Income minus, you decide how much you want to save every month, and then take the step. The remaining part is your expenses. When you do that, you will be able to understand the potential of that 5-10% additional savings that you do. It has massive implication on your overall financial plan. We all know that the scope of increase in income is always limited. It has multiple factors, but what we have in our hand, and as we said, you are the driver of the financial plan. You have the potential of saving more because that is more in your hand. So income is one big source for your financial plan. Then comes your assets. Your assets, as we said, we need to look where these assets are lying. Every penny where you have saved and invested should be there in front of you. Often while we are interacting with clients, we also come to know that the investments have been done in multiple avenues. And then over a period of 1 week, 2 weeks, 5 weeks, or 6 weeks also, we come to know that clients would come back and say, oh, I missed out with this particular asset. Now, this is natural because there is always a tendency to do some random investments under some pressure or just to help someone. Now, with all those things happening around, at the end of the day, we have to account for all the money that we have invested. Because for a financial plan, you have to use each and every penny of yours. Each and every money that you have saved and invested should be linked to an objective. So there's a thumb rule which is called in the financial world. It says 50-30-20, where it says that 50% of your monthly income should be focused on or should be used for your mandatory expenses, 30% for your leisure expenses, or discretionary expenses, if in case you can call it as, and 20% is on savings. Okay. So just a while ago, we discussed about income minus savings is equal to expenses. This is what, if in case you try, it results in a very important thing where it gives you more fuel for your financial plan. Because when you start working for your financial plan, sometimes you may see that your income plus your current assets, including both, there will be a shortfall for the goals that you are targeting. And that is where, if in case you try to optimize your overall savings, this will help you as a more fuel for your financial plan. Now, financial plan considers lot many things. It also considers insurance. It also considers tax planning. Today, we are going to talk about the insurance part first. It is because it is always important for us to ensure that we create that safety net. We do not want any emergency, any kind of emergency, to impact our overall financial plan. To counter these emergencies, let's say short-term emergency, we create something called contingency fund, where at any point of time, again, I'll repeat, at any point of time, irrespective of our age and income, we should always have 6 to 9 months of our monthly expenses in a normal savings account or a liquid fund, wherever you are comfortable with. Once this is in place, any short-term emergency will be taken care. There are other risks that are there on the overall financial plan, and those are, if in case this is my plan and something happens to me, how do we mitigate that risk? So life insurance plays the role. Life insurance, bear in mind, is not an investment. It is to just replace the earning capacity of a person. So in your case, you need to have adequate insurance. How much insurance you need is subsequently we'll discuss. And then comes health insurance. Now, what does a health insurance does? Of course, most of us are aware of it, but it's also an important thing for us to reiterate that any of these emergencies, short-term, anything happening to the breadwinner, or any health issues that come up, can derail the overall financial plan. We do not want our financial plan to get affected by any emergency. Hence, we ensure that even health insurance is in place, where we protect our wealth from getting eroded in case of any illness or hospitalization. Now, there are people who are just starting at in their career, and there are people who are in mid of their career. There are a lot of people who would be at the almost nearing their retirement. Well, insurance cover is needed for everyone who is earning. So the purpose of insurance is to replace the earning capacity. Now here, there are a few examples that we have. We'll just pick up one example and then we'll take further on, and then we'll discuss how do we actually calculate the insurance need. Let's say who's someone who is 35 years old and he or she is earning 1,50,000 per month. Now I'm assuming that he or she gives the entire or contributes entire 1,50,000 for his or her family. Assuming a 5% increase in the income every year, if the person retires at the or plan to retire at the age of 60, this gentleman or lady will get close to around 8.9 crores for her family in these 25 years. That is 60 minus 35. That is what he or she will be contributing for her family. Now, the purpose of insurance is to replace this income loss if in case anything happens to him or her. On that basis, we need a risk cover of 2 crore. And how this 2 crore is calculated? Now we are very sure that at this stage, right from today till the age of 60, I'm going to get close to around 9 crore for my family. If something happens to me today, and my risk cover is 2 crore or 2 crore 8 lakhs, or let's say for a simple understanding 2 crores. If this claim is invested for any instrument or in any instrument which gives me 6%, it will take care of my monthly income for coming 25 years, which also includes the growth in income. So in a way, if anything happens to me, this particular claim amount will take care of the financial loss to the family. Now that is the purpose of insurance, and that is why people take insurance. And the way to calculate it is typically to work on the basis of your income. So there are multiple methods of calculating insurance. This is basically the way to calculate, which is in the form of income replacement. Now there are a lot of thumb rules which are there. Okay, 5 times, 10 times of your overall annual income. It will come very close to these kind of thumb rule, but the right way is to look at your insurance need is on the basis of your monthly income and the growth rate at which you expect your income to be, because it is linked to how much you are going to get for your family in case you are there till your retirement. And of course, whenever you try to, or whenever you plan to go for insurance, always opt for term insurance, because insurance is not for investments. It is only to cover the risk. So once we have ensured the safety net on our plan with the help of contingency fund and insurance, the next step, as we said, we'll look into the financial goals. Now, the financial goals could differ. Okay, some could be short term, some could be long term. Like it could be as good as buying a vehicle, buying a house, my education or my children's education, okay, children's marriage, retirement, anything. It could be inheritance, it could be wealth creation. Okay. These days, a lot of people add their vacation as their financial goal. Those are all valid financial goals, and these financial goals will always be there with us throughout the years. Even though, let's say, our goals are intact, wealth creation will always be a goal. Because there is a surplus, we need to use this surplus in the best possible manner. So how to work on these financial goals? So the first step is to identify, out of all these financial goals, what are the goals that I want to target? Then as a next step, what you should do is you should give a timeline to it. So as we said, there has to be a destination. Similarly, there has to be a destination for this goal. If in case your goal is to buy a vehicle, then I want to buy this vehicle in 3 years or 4 years or maybe 2 years. Define that timeline. As a next step, once you set the timeline, then work on the goal amount. For my child's education, after 12 years, I need 1 CR. Now that's clearly defined financial goal. Of course, there will be a lot of discussions and calculation which will go behind that 1 CR, but this gives us a clear picture. This will also give you a clear picture of where you are heading, how much you want. Because financial goals need to be spelled out very clearly. It cannot be a vague financial goal that, okay, I want to just achieve, I just want to keep this money aside and where, whatever I will reach, I'll reach. That's not the right way of approaching the financial goal. So first identify it, then set the timelines for each and every financial goal, and then give a goal amount. Once you do that, depending on what kind of financial goals are there and what kind of timelines we have for these financial goals, you work on the ideal asset class to invest into. Now, if in case, and in this example, I would just like to say that if in case I have an idea of buying a car or a house in maybe 2 or 3 years, then this is more of a short to mid-term. And usually from our experience, whenever we have interacted with our clients, these goals are more short-term in nature. They would ideally like to do it in 1 year, 2 years, or maximum 3 years. Then for this goal, the ideal asset class to be invested into is debt or money market, where you don't take much risk. And because the financial goal is near term. Likewise, if in case we have long-term goals, you do add an element of equity. And of course, in India, we all love gold. At the same time, in India, there's a lot of tradition, and the gold holds a lot of value in terms of marriage. Then you also start accumulating and investing in gold if in case you plan to target the goal of your child's marriage. When you look at wealth creation and inheritance, because in our view, you can also add real estate, but real estate often tends to be very subjective, depending on what location your property is in, and then at what rate it is growing. Because we have seen a range of around right from 2.5% to around 7 to 8% of growth in real estate, depending on what where your property is. Okay. So if you look at all your goals, As we said, identify the goals, define a timeline, define an amount that you're targeting, and then we decide what kind of asset class we want to invest into. The crucial part of investing for your financial plan is where do you park your money so that you get the most from your savings as well as your current assets. So those are the two main source of your financial plan. How do you take care of that? Now, this is just this is just a small example to explain you all why equities or any other asset class matters. Now, the green line is the equity, that is BSE 100, and how 100 rupees invested in BSE 100 would have behaved in last 10 years. Similarly, the other color line are more of a debt investments, okay, where it is more steady, okay, and gradual increase. So in a way, it tells me that if 100 rupees I would have invested in May 2011, today it would have been close to around almost 350 in equities. Likewise, in other debt investments like corporate bond or other bonds, okay, or overall bonds, it will be close to around 250. Now, this is very important for us to understand, okay, that the volatility will be always much higher in equities. Hence, the purpose of telling that for short-term goals, avoid equities. For long-term, look at equities. Let's say if in case I would have started my goal year and my investment horizon was my goal was in 2 years. And if in case I would have invested in equities right throughout the 2 years from May 2011 to 2013, the money growth would have been much, much lesser. And also it was volatile. At one point of time, I would have been staring at a loss. So with all these things happening around, okay, I would have probably given up on my goal, or I would have given up on my asset investment that we have or asset class that I would have invested. Now, if in case my financial goal was for 5 years, then I'm still fine, better than the other asset class. Likewise, for short term, taking the same example ahead, if in case I had my goal for 2 years and I would have invested in debt, I can see my steady growth of money. That is the reason why we say that for your short-term goals, you take any timeline from this and you will see that debt will not disappoint you. Of course, there are multiple things which matters when it comes to debt returns. Okay, but it is much, much safer. Okay, I'm not saying it is absolutely safer, but it is much safer than equities when it comes to short-term goals. Likewise, equities give you the opportunity of higher growth over a longer period of time. Hence, each and every goal of yours should have its own asset allocation. There have been thumb rules which says that your age, so 100 minus your age is what equity component you should have. In our view, these are good guidelines, but at the same time, your asset allocation should get defined by each and every goal. Let's say, for example, my goals are all long-term in nature, and my colleagues' goals are maybe a mix of short and long-term. So in such a case, I would be investing much higher in equities. So my allocation, despite of being the same age, despite of having the same risk appetite, would be different because our financial goals are different. So your financial goals will define overall asset allocation. While the thumb rules are great, but at the same time, each and every goal. So for retirement, I may not keep money in fixed deposit. Likewise, for buying a vehicle in 1 year, I will not keep money in equities. If I have all long-term goals, it gives me all the right to go ahead and invest more in equities. Likewise, you look at your overall financial goals and then invest into different asset classes, which are based on what works right for that particular goal. That's the reason we have said that equities work more for long term. So just to explain that concept of why it is important to have the right investment options or investments in different asset classes or right asset class, Here is an example where we have a 35-year-old person who wants to retire at the age of 20. The goal amount is 2.5 crore, and monthly investment is 30,000. Now there are three people, A, B, and C. Now, if the allocation of A is 70% equity and 30% debt, the 30,000 rupees per month will be able to accumulate 2.39 CR, which is a bit short of the goal that he or she was targeting. If the allocation, because the goal is 20 years down the line, it gives you a liberty to take additional risk and give more money or give more time to equity investment. In such a case, if 90% is invested into equities and 10% in debt, the outcome will be 2.60 crore. And if the comfort is much more higher, because you know that 20 years is a long time and I can easily take entire or invest entire money in equities, the accumulated amount for this particular goal would be 2.75 CR. So as you see, the asset allocation for each goal will differ. And on the basis of what do you choose or where do you choose to invest, that will define whether you will be able to reach the goal, just touch the goal, or surpass the goal. So always keep in mind that for long-term goals, you need to have an element of equity. That was looking at one way. The other way to look at it is, if in case you use time in a better way, okay, you will have to end up investing much lesser than what others would be. So I'm just flipping the same example here, where the investment is for 10 years and the goal is 80 lakhs. Let's say A and B both want to accumulate 80 lakhs in 10 years. If this is the goal and they follow this allocation, okay, the investment amount, the annual investment amount for A is higher than B. So B has to invest 10% lesser than A. Now, why so? Is because B is investing more in equities where the potential of growth is higher. Why B is investing more in equities is because he or she have 10 years for this money to grow. Hence, your timeline and your allocation across different investments will define how much you should be investing into. Now, this is particularly helpful in financial plan when you have multiple goals and limited resources in the form of your monthly surplus and current assets. In such a case, you will have to optimize your overall plan. And one of the way to optimize this is to look at more long-term investments from an equity perspective and lesser from the non-equity perspective. Okay. We all know time is the most perishable thing in our life. This is something that one of my friends told me, okay, and it's so true. Let's say that someone who's at the age of 25 starts investing 5,000 a month will be easily able to accumulate 44 lakhs, 46 lakhs. Okay. And someone who starts late will be only able to accumulate 44 lakhs. Okay. So if you look from all these perspectives, it is very important to start early. To start early, if you start early, you'll be able to accumulate a much more bigger corpus, as we see in this particular example. And like we saw the earlier slide, where if you start early, okay, you will be able to achieve the same number by investing lesser amount. Now, if you look at this, it is very important for us to use the time that we have. Hence, when you work on the financial plan, define that timeline very clearly. The financial plan will be, let's say, if in case you have a goal for 10 years, ideal way to take care of it is you invest for 8 years. And then we did talk about the de-risking strategy, where you invest for 8 years and from the 9th year beginning, you start withdrawing every month. So that's how you look at time and timeline when you come to investments for your financial. We did talk about equities and why we should not ignore equities. This is a very important slide which gives us a lot of sense about how to look at equities, one, and second is what to expect from equities. So one So let's take the first one. Okay, what kind of returns expectations that we should have from equities? Now, these are different rolling cycles. These are all month-end rolling cycles. And let's say if in case it is 1 year, then for 1 year period, there have been almost 245 rolling cycles. Okay. Likewise, these many number of rolling cycles for different years of holding. Now, if you look across the median return across all these rolling cycles for all these years is around 12 to 14%. Now, I would ignore the 1 year, 3 year timeline, okay, because usually you do not park for 1 year or 3 years. If I look from 5 year to 15 years, and if in case you want to also look at 20 years, it'll be higher than this. Typically, what you can expect, it tells you that what you can expect is around 11.5 to 14% return. Now, this is what equities can do for you when you look at it in the right manner. How to look at it in the right manner is when we look at the negative returns from equities within the cycle. The shorter the period, higher the negative cycle. Now, what does this tell us? That in 1 year, okay, if in case I keep on buying and selling and I follow that 1 year cycle, almost 3 out of 10 times I will end up making a loss. The probability of making a loss reduces as I hold it for a much more longer period. Of course, higher the risk, higher the returns will follow. Okay, but these are higher returns at the same time, these are higher risk. So the volatility will be much higher if in case we look at 1 year or 3 years. The more you hold it, of course, you can see the returns getting settled, but at the same time, you also see the lowest returns in the, in these columns. Now, one of the way to look at it is equities. Ideally, whenever you park money, or at least when you start working on your financial plan, consider equities at around 10 to 10.5%. Okay. One of the reasons is because when you invest into equities, you'll be investing not everything at one go. You'll be investing in a staggered manner through SIPs or every month investment into direct equities. Hence, always keep in mind that be conservative. A 10 to 10.5% or maximum 11% at the time of planning can help you, so that when you try to work on it and when you're nearing your goal, few goals are non-compromisable. You cannot compromise. For such goals, if you in case you have a surplus amount, it is good. You would not like to have a shortfall in these goals. Hence, try to be conservative. Equities, in our view, should give you somewhere between 12 to 14% over a longer period of time. Now, this is the reason, and this is a strong reason why you should be having equities in your overall portfolio whenever you work for your financial plan. And as we saw, more the patience you have, higher will be the value of your investments. And how does it translate in terms of returns, if in case one has to look at, right? So patience always pays. We always keep on saying that. We take the same cycles just to give you some sense of what kind of returns you can get. Now that was purely around 12 to 14%. But if we break these cycles and see whether you have ended up doing better than your traditional fixed deposit or debt, or you are better off with fixed deposit or debt. Let's say this is the threshold limit where your fixed deposit or debt investments will typically give you these kind of returns. Now, if you look at from a long-term perspective, the percentage of returns beating this threshold limit is much more higher. Hence, that right investment or right asset allocation in equities for your long-term goals is relevant. We have seen a lot of times, and we do suggest to our clients that you should treat your employee provident fund, voluntary provident fund, if in case you go, if you already have a PPF, these are good instruments where the investments constantly keep on going, one from your from salary, okay, and other that you have voluntary opted for, and it also takes care of your debt allocation. So whenever you try to work on any financial goal and investments for these financial goals, always consider the money that is getting deducted from your salary, which is going in the form of EPF and PPF, because they can be more on the debt side, and then you have the liberty to invest the other money into equities. Coming to inflation, which is another crucial part of uh, financial plan. Whenever you work on any financial plan or any goal, we need to keep in mind inflation. Inflation is here to stay. It's not going out. Okay. So in any developing economy, you would have seen that the inflation will continue to be around. Yeah, the inflation rate could come down, but at the same time, when the inflation rate comes down, your return potential on multiple assets and different assets will also come down. Okay. So just to put forward that, always consider inflation when you work on your financial plan. One from a cost perspective and another from an investment perspective. What it tells us that something that I am buying for 1,000 rupees today, to buy the same thing after 20 years, I will have to shell out 3,870 rupees if the inflation is of 7%. Now, when you work on your financial goals like retirement, child education, we always have to take inflation in mind. While when you work on something for your retirement and particularly also for your post-retirement, we have to consider inflation. So in a typical case, because where we have been helping few of the senior citizens to work on their post-retirement investments, we have to consider the inflation, and that's how you work on your overall plan and overall investments, where you try to beat the inflation so that you get some growth from your investments. So that is how on the purchasing power, inflation has an impact. So you always have to consider inflation. When it comes to investment, let's say if the inflation rate is 7% and your return on investment is giving 8%, then you are earning 0.93%. That becomes your real rate of return in a way. So if in case you have a lot of money parked in instruments which is giving less than 7%, that money is actually degrowing. Hence, always keep an eye. So when we said, get on a sheet of paper that, or, Excel sheet, that where each and every money of yours is lying. If you see a lot of money is being parked in bank account or fixed deposit, there is a high possibility that this investment of yours is actually degrowing, because the inflation could be higher than what actually you're earning. And that could eat up your overall savings. And that will end up hurting your overall financial plan. So always remember, when you work on your plan, consider inflation for working on how much is the goal amount that you need. At the same time, okay, factor in the inflation impact whenever you calculate the returns for your investments that you are doing for these different financial goals. Now, our thesis is very simple. Okay, for according to us, loans, if in case it is avoidable, try to avoid it. Okay, because in matter of time, it can become a massive load on your head. Now, if it is not avoidable, then you try to repay quickly. And why we say so? Let's take another example here to understand the impact of your debt that you take. Let's say the loan amount is close to 75 lakhs that you take at the initial stage. The loan is for 20 years and the interest rate is 7.5%. Your EMI would be approximately 60,400. The total amount that you're going to pay back to the bank is 1.45 CR, almost double. Now, the key element in a loan is that if in case you have money at the initial stage after taking the loan in the form of bonus or let's say income growth, try to use that to make some part payment towards the loan. Why so is because in the same example that we are discussing, at the end of 5 years, I would have just repaid 13% of my loan. Now, This is the total amount that I would have paid to the bank in the form of EMI. Out of 36.25 lakhs, I have paid the interest of 26.42. By the end of 10 years, you have not paid 50% of your liability. You have only repaid 30 or 32% of your liability. You still have 70% of your liability to be repaid. So the way these loans works, in the initial stage, the interest component is much more higher. And if you are in the beginning well placed to keep some money aside to repay these debt, then try to do it. Try to do it. Okay. And till the time you do not repay this liability, or the time you take the loan, okay, that are the time where you already start believing that you are not just working for yourself and your family, you are also working for the bank from which you have taken the loan. So of course, that's the reason we say include your loan repayment in your plan. When we look at the overall net worth of any of our client, or when you look at your own net worth, you will have assets, then you have liabilities. So asset minus liability will be your actual net worth. Now your net worth will drop because you have a liability. Now what we say is, if in case you have a liability, then there are ways, or there are strategies to work on a repayment of these loans. How do you go about? So one is, of course, the first thing is, before you take the loan, have a proper plan. At least have an idea that I intend to take a long-term loan like a home loan, maybe after 1 year or 2 years. In such a case, when you start working on your plan, you may like to allocate some additional money for this particular purpose, and then wait for a while and then invest for your long-term goals. That will help you to reduce the loan amount or the liability right in the beginning. Let's say you have gone past that stage, okay, and then if in case your finance allow you to either reduce the tenure or opt for lesser tenure, then go for it. That will help you, because we saw the loading of interest that you have on loans at the initial stage. Allocate the amount of loan repayment in your monthly budget. Once you become more comfortable with your finance, and if in case you have a liability, start pulling out some money from your overall monthly budget for your loan repayment. Go step by step, and then you see the massive difference that is going to come in your overall finance once you start repaying this liability. Of course, there have been a lot of discussions about having or continuing with the loan for a longer period of time so that you get tax benefit. At the same time, there have been a lot of discussions on the loans are for around 7 to 7.5%. If I invest into equities, it gives me 10%, so the trade-off is much better. There are all these things are fine. The thesis of suggesting the loan repayment is, it is always better to repay the debt and not to carry debt, because debt is something which will get transferred to your family members as well. While all these things are there, but the way to look at it is, you can efficiently use the loan too. Okay. So let's say most of the loans in today's world are of higher amount, and when you take that loan, your interest payment, it would be approximately more than 2 lakh rupees. So the way to optimize it, and if in case you have the idea of making part payment, you bring that loan to a level where you can continue to get this tax benefit, at the same time reduce the liability as well. Now, if in case your loan is on your name as well as your spouse name, if in case it's joint, then both of you can take 2 lakhs benefit and work on part payment or prepayment accordingly. Ideally, try to close your home loan with all the benefits that you want to take within half of the tenure, because that's going to help you in saving substantial money. And most importantly, you're free in your mind that you do not have to repay anyone, and you are out of liability. So while you work on financial plan, it is very important to understand that money is just a small part of your life. Okay, We have been discussing a lot about wealth creation, money, financial plan, goals. All these things are great. Okay, just keep in mind that money is a part of your overall life. Often we tend to see is, you know, the mind share that money takes and life takes is huge difference. Money takes a lot of our mind share and a lot of time. Okay, and we don't think about life. Try to create a sort of a nice balance between both, because we at My Wealth Growth like to say that life is much more greater and bigger than money. So on that note, let me just quickly try to summarize and how do you work on these financial plan for yourself. We did discuss that financial plan is must for all, irrespective of whatever age or income you have. Everyone who earns income or everyone who has an asset or who has investments should have a plan in place. We need to take care of our income, at the same time where the money is lying, because these are the two core source of our overall financial plan. Insurance is not an investment, it's for replacing the earning capacity. What insurance, contingency fund, and health insurance and all does is it gives you the comfort of the safety net, so that it doesn't disrupt or affect your overall financial plan if in case in case of any emergency. Investing in the right asset class is very important. We did saw the example of if in case the equity component for long term is lesser, there is a possibility that I may end up with a shortfall, or I may do much better if in case I am investing in the right asset class. Okay, that example can also be equally flipped. Okay, if in case my goals were short term and equities, I would have been in the equities, it would have hurt me. So understand the time horizon of your financial goals and invest accordingly. Okay. And it's not necessary that your asset allocation should be as per the thumb rule of 100 minus your age. That much should be into equities. A lot depends on your financial goals and what kind of timelines you have set for these financial goals. We cannot ignore equities. Equities, in our view, is the only asset class which can consistently give you around, as we said, and as we saw, around 11 to 14% over a long term. There is no other asset class which can come closer to it right now. Few years back, we were talking about real estate, but we all know that real estate has gone through multiple challenges in few years. Okay. And of course, it's very subjective. Hence, equity cannot be ignored irrespective of the age. Even though you're retired or you're about to retire, you will need to have an allocation in equities. Of course, loans, if possible, avoid or repay quickly. We did discuss about the need of reviewing this plan every 6 months. You need to relook into it, where you are progressing, how things are moving on. Just an understanding about the progress will give you more confidence and give you more insights about whether you are heading towards the right direction. This is very important. In our last 15-20 years of discussions with clients, we have seen many cases where the family is not aware about where the money is lying. It is very important for each one of us to create either a Excel file or on a piece of paper. Note down all your savings, investments, and insurance details, and share it with your family member. Now, if you want, you can choose two people, okay, because there's a possibility. Usually, husband, wife will have those details with them. But, like I always keep on saying, that if something happens to both of them together, then there has to be a backup. So always try to create a backup with someone who has information about your investments and savings, and someone who is reliable. It's very important. We all know that there are more than, I think, 16 to 17,000 crores of unclaimed money lying with LIC, and that is because the family members are not aware where the money is. Make a will, very important. Just don't think that if in case you have appointed a nominee, it's going to take care. Nominee is just a trustee or a caretaker. It's not; they are not the beneficiary, okay? And it can be challenged. Hence, make a will. It's not that difficult to make a will. So I hope that whatever we have discussed today did give you some sense of how do you work on financial plan for yourself.